Good afternoon. This is Kim Churches from AAUW. We're delighted as people are joining us today to speak with your nationally elected board leadership about all things AAUW. So we're just going to let everybody come into the queue here, and then we'll get started in just a couple minutes. For those of you who have been participating in our weekly webinars, a couple of housekeeping reminders. We utilize the chat at the bottom of your screen if you are having technical issues. Like, for example, if I start turning green in polka dots and you can't see me or you can't hear us, do put that in the chat and we'll try and take care of your technical issues as best we can. If you have a substantive question or comment that you'd like our board leaders to address, please use the Q&A function, which is at the right bottom of your screen, and type it in right there, and we'll get to as many of them as we can today as you meet with your board leaders. This is a great turnout already. We've got over 140 folks coming in. We'll let that keep going for just a minute or two before I introduce all of our special guests today on today's AAUW member webinar. Again, if you've just joined us, we'll be getting started here with AAUW's board leaders to talk about the state of AAUW and how we are coping and faring in this strange, uncertain, and scary time for all of us as we face a pandemic, a downturn of the economy, and also really strengthen our stand against racism and bolstering racial equity in our gender equity work. So we'll be talking about those with your board leaders, Julia Brown, Melinda Gall, Peggy Cavenis, and Sherry Sorokin today. So last but not least, I'll say it one more time for those of you on the call. Please, if you have any technical issues, if you could use the chat box at the bottom line of your screen in the center, any technical issues, meaning you cannot hear or see us. And if you have any questions or comments about AAUW or about our fine accoutrement that we're all wearing today or anything else, please use the Q&A to post a comment or question to your AAUW elected leaders. And with that, I will be going off a video and you get to engage with these extraordinary member leaders of AAUW's National Board. And I will turn it over now to Madam Chair, Julia Brown.
Thank you, Kim. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining us today for this town hall with your National Board leadership. And thank you for being part of AAUW. There are three things you should think of when you think of AAUW. Mission. Of course, our mission, as you know, was to advance gender equity for women and girls through research, education, and advocacy. Vision. Our vision is equity for all. When women are discriminated against or treated inequitably, it impacts families, neighborhoods, and communities. We know that women are more likely than men to be poor or struggling, especially Black, Latina, and Native women. When any of us are being treated inequitably, it impacts all of us. So working for racial equity benefits everyone. The third thing you should think about when you think of AAUW is values. Nonpartisan, fact-based, we act with integrity, and we practice inclusion and intersectionality. Now, this year marks the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, as well as the 55th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act, two crucial milestones in giving women the right to vote. It's also a critical election year, with Title IX under threat, a persistent gender pay gap, and a dearth of women leaders. The stakes couldn't be higher for us. This year, our path has been crossed by COVID-19, and seeing it up close and personal lets us know that given the lack of or poor access to quality health care has a negative impact on women, women of color, poor women, unemployed and underemployed women, and this pandemic is having a deleterious effect on the economic security and safety of women. This pandemic lets us know that the work of AAUW is not done. We've come a long, long way, but our work is not yet complete. AAUW joins the country in mourning the loss of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and countless other people of color who have been unjustly killed across our nation. Our country needs healing, but healing will only come with justice and equity. As an organization, we uphold justice and equity, and we condemn racism in all its ugly forms. And with that, I will turn it over to the rest of the board leadership for them to make introductory remarks, and then we'll go to some questions from you all.
Good afternoon. I'm Melinda Gall, and I'm serving this term as the board vice chair. I've been a long-time employment lawyer representing people in discrimination cases, and it troubles me now to see what is going on in our country, but I'm glad that it's coming to the forefront, and I'm glad that all of you members of AAUW understand the importance of equity for all people, especially women and girls that we have fought so long to try to eliminate. I think the country can come together now and really look for ways to make things better. I think we all see what's going on and that we're all focused on the same goal of equity for women and girls and for everyone. And so thank you for joining us today, and hopefully we can answer all of your questions that you have about AAUW.
Who's next? Peggy, do you want to go next?
Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Peggy Cavenis. I'm the vice chair of the finance chair, and I look forward to sharing with you information today about AAUW finances. And one of the most exciting things is to share with you the programs that help accomplish our mission and that are aligned with our strategic plan. So I look forward to questions and hoping to help everybody understand finances better.
Something to be aspired to, understanding finances. So I'm Sherry Sorokin, and I'm the board secretary, and I have been an AAUW member practically all my life. My mom was a long-term member and saw to it that I joined right after college, and it's been a force in my life really all through my career, and now that I'm retired continues to be. And I'm so proud of the work that AAUW has done over the years and how we've been able to adjust as things change around us. And it's an incredibly heady time to be on the national board right now, trying to figure out how, with this pandemic, our work can continue and be even more relevant than it has been in the past. I think the pandemic has really confronted all of us with the fact that women are disproportionately affected by this kind of upheaval, and our work is ever more important, and particularly minority women are disproportionately affected. And so we have a lot to do in front of us, but I'm also really excited about the fact that the technology like Zoom makes it possible for us to reach thousands more people than we ever could have before, and to maybe reinvent our affiliate structure, make it possible for branches that are really teeny to team up with other branches and to do programming. And so it's an exciting time, and I look forward to talking about it with you. Do we have any questions?
Not yet. We had one question. This is Kim again. We had one question come in from Caroline Pickens about a statement from Julia about our Stand Against Racism, which she just shared in the beginning, and it will be posted soon on the website as well. But essentially, when we post those statements, those are statements really and that the National Board is well aware of. I don't know, perhaps while we wait for additional questions to come in, if you all would like to share a little bit about how you're thinking about this fiscal year, given how we planned out the budget a year ago and the entire world went upside down, and how we're looking ahead into fiscal year 21 for AAUW, given the board meeting we had with with you all in your leadership last Friday, which begins July 1.
I think the most important thing is that we're going to have a balanced budget. Again, this is the second year in a row that we've come in with a budget that is in fact balanced, intended to be balanced, and is realistic. And I think that's just one of the more important things that is happening now at AAUW is how we are looking at where the money comes from and where we can have an impact of where we spend it, and can we end up with at the end of the year with something that is a balanced budget. I'm just really proud of the work that Kim and her team and the board have done in that regard.
Let me say something, probably jumping into Peggy, our VP for Finances lane for just a minute. I don't believe there are any branches that have staff. I know that some of the state organizations have staff. And so for some of you, as you look at developing the budgets for your respective branches and affiliates, and then you look at the budget for the national organization, you may find it strange that there are salaries and pay and fringe benefits, because of course you don't have to deal with those things at the branch level. But the things that the organization does, the work that we do, what we do to carry out the mission of AAUW, and to collaborate with other national organizations, to do outreach to our state organizations and affiliates and the branches, to provide resources, to have staff manage the application process for fellowships and grants, and to make the decisions and to keep up with the payout of those fellowships and grants. All of those things require staff. Those are not things that, for example, a volunteer board of directors could do. Even if all of us lived full-time in Washington, D.C., where the national office is, we still could not do all of the things that are necessary to be done for an organization of this magnitude and with this kind of mission. And certainly, you can't expect that an organization like this can run on volunteers who may or may not have the level of expertise and experience to be able to do the tasks necessary, and may or may not be able to show up at any given point in time. Therefore, we have paid staff. And part of the budget, part of what your dues go to pay for, part of what your donations that are unrestricted go to pay for, part of the grants and unrestricted donations that we are able to get from foundations and other sources go to pay for the national office, to pay for postage, to pay for all of the technology that's necessary, to pay for the staff. And occasionally, when I've been fortunate enough to be with you at various meetings out in the states and the branches, people have asked that question. And so just anticipating that it might come up, I thought, well, let's just jump right in there and talk about why that's necessary.
Juliet.
I don't know if we'd like to have just a very brief overview of AAUW finances, and maybe a little explanation of our greatest needs fund request for greatest needs funds. But just to take a moment to let everybody sort of know the overall picture of AAUW. If you read our financial reports, you'll read that AAUW is a nonprofit organization with total assets of about $122, $123 million. And with that amount of money, a lot of people would say, well, my goodness, what in the world could, how could you have any problems? So one of the things is to understand the nature of our finances. That $123 million is broken down into basically two different pots. And I have a little Lego explanation here. If you'll see behind me, basically, about $120 million is in restricted assets. They can be used only for scholarships. There's only so much a year you can take out. You cannot use it for to meet operating expenses. The remaining $4 million is a little tiny stack of Legos over here, so small you can probably not even see it. But so the whole thing is that really AAUW is very restricted as far as how they can get at these assets. Now, one of the things is what are these assets used for? Well, the restricted assets are used strictly for scholarships, fellowships, and some very special projects. They do benefit hundreds of young women in higher education, and we're very proud of that. That's part of our history. But I'd like to mention over here, in this little stack over here, I don't know if you can see it, but this is the unrestricted assets, which are down to under $4 million at the moment. And what's important about them is that they fund all the new exciting programs. These are all the new programs that have been developed the last couple of years. They include Start Smart, Work Smart, a lot of the research that we do, the programs for equal pay, helping and support, all the unrestricted assets support all our branches and provide member services, our voter education programs. In other words, these programs funded with unrestricted dollars reach tens of thousands, if not millions, of young women and girls. So when you and your branches or you as a member go to donate, one of the things you can see from this chart is we do not need any more money over in restricted assets and scholarships. We have plenty of money for close to 100 years to fund scholarships. But we do need money over in what we call unrestricted or greatest needs. These are the assets that help fund all these wonderful, exciting new programs that we're talking about. So that's just a quick overview of AAUW finances. If you have any questions, please enter them in the chat room.
Peggy, I noticed specifically that people were asking, what's the percentage of our budget that is covered by dues, just dues?
Oh, let me look at one of my little charts here.
It ranges, if it helps, it ranges between 15 to 20%. So we have a $16.5 million budget, and membership dues only covers 15 to 20%. In the old days of membership associations, they typically cover 75 to 85% of a budget. So our membership dues only cover a small portion of our overall budget. Sorry for butting in.
No.
And because I noticed that we had several questions that they wanted to be able to take back to their branches and say, where do my dues go? So we can explain to them that all our branch members that your dues only cover between 15 to 20% of what we do outside fellowships and grants. So when you want to know specifically where your dues go to, any of our programs, or if you want to say that we're specifically covering by dues, we might cover 1 or 2 of our programs with your dues, but it's a small percentage of our overall budget from the dues. I was trying to see what other questions we might have that we could address.
There are a couple of things around how we might create more diverse branches and what does AAUW look like demographically nationally. And I know we shared some of that. Maybe if Julia or Melinda, you want to address that, given what we discussed on Friday about our staff demography and how we're doing with membership recruitment. And if you need me to weigh in on the new Equity Network pilot, just let me know.
Melinda, you want to start?
Sure, I'll start. I've been a member of AAUW for more than 30 years, and the demographics of AAUW hasn't changed. We are way high in percentage of white females. And I mean, we're not anywhere near 50-50 of any kind of non-white member. So we are predominantly a white woman organization and an average age up in the 70 range. So when you're looking we understand when you're looking to make your branches more diverse, any addition to your branches is going to be a help because we are so predominantly high in age and predominantly white female. But our staff is very diverse. Our staff covers all age brackets. They cover many ethnicities. We have men, we have women. So when you look at our staff, you look at a very, very diverse organization that is familiar with all kinds of issues and brings a variety of ideas and perspectives to the AAUW table. So our staff looks like what we wish our branches looked like. So when we talk about trying to make our branches more diverse, it's really going to be, you're going to have to go out there and get out of your comfort zone, get away from just your friends, and reach out to other groups and to other organizations and look specifically to diverse organizations to work with you on projects and kind of come together so that you can introduce AAUW to a new audience. That is what the Equity Network is also trying to do. Introduce AAUW to a broad range of people across this country and hopefully add to our supporters and potentially add to our membership. But we know now membership organizations are going down across the board. So if your only goal is to get a new member, you might be disappointed. But if your goal is to introduce AAUW and its mission, its ideas to a new audience, to work with a new audience, the Equity Network is a step in the right direction.
Thank you, Melinda. I see, well, over time, we've had many branches ask, what can we do to diversify our membership and what ideas does the national have, or what ideas does the national board have for us to do this? And for a number of years, there have been all kinds of resources available online, including so many programs in a box that I'm not sure I ever was able to even open all of them. But if you can imagine a topic or an issue that a branch might want some background or assistance or resources on, staff developed a program in the box on it. Yet when you looked at the number of members and branches that actually went to the website and opened and used those programs in a box, it seemed like the staff was tilting at windmills for all of the usage that information and those resources got. One of the other things that we're finding now is that younger women are just generally not joiners the way older women are. They're more interested in a specific issue or maybe a specific event that they might come out to, that they might participate in, but going to meetings where we spend hours on time going over bylaws and trying to amend them and talking about what size the board should be and other governance kinds of things. Unfortunately, for the most part, younger women are just not interested in that. And when you couple that with the fact that they are perhaps at the beginning of their career, they may be starting out in a personal relationship, they may have young children at home, and they simply don't have the kind of disposable time on their hands to devote to all of their live work endeavors and responsibilities and spend all of the rest of their free time in meetings. So it really is incumbent upon all of us, including the branches and the affiliates and the state organizations, to think of ways to partner and collaborate with other organizations in the community, to think about the kind of outreach that you can do, and to think about what value proposition you can offer to members if your goal is to increase and diversify your membership, and not look at what can new members bring to the table.
There's a question, I think this is a good one that we can all address here. It actually was in the chat instead of the Q&A, but it's about if the organization has to declare bankruptcy, how will our endowment or our scholarship funds be dispersed? And
We're not declaring bankruptcy.
exactly. That's why I want to make sure we all can.
Let me address this one. We are not going bankrupt. You see that tall stack of Legos over there that Peggy told you would last 100 years? We have over $100 million in our scholarships and fellowships and grants. We're not going bankrupt. That pot will always sustain our fellowships and grants. It will sustain that part of our organization that we started out as and we've built a foundation on. It's all the other stuff you want to do. It's all the advocacy you want to do. It's the equity. It's the pay equity. It's the work smart. It's the equity network. That is all has to be paid from that little tiny pot of money. The only thing that we're going to have to do is stop doing extra things other than fellowships and grants. But we're not going bankrupt. We're not close to going bankrupt. They laugh because they know I get on this one all the time. We're not going bankrupt.
When I saw that question, that's what made me start choking. So I'm sorry.
They've heard me say it over and over.
That's good. Can we just take a moment?
Go ahead, Peggy.
I was just going to take a moment to, this is a visual example of the what you call the balance sheet. In other words, the assets of AAUW. Let's talk just a moment about what the budget is for the year, because I think this is really important that you not only know what the board has supported, but the heroic efforts and the difficult choices that Kim Churches has made the last couple of years. So let's just talk about the budget for a moment. AAUW used to have a budget that called for approximately, there was a time that they honestly expected revenues of $24 million and expenses of $24 million. Actually, they did used to spend about $24 million a year, but the revenues didn't come in that high. So then they cut it back to revenues of $20 million and expenses of $20 million, and they still didn't meet the budget. When Kimberly joined us, and thank goodness, I was going to say thank God, but thank goodness she did, part of her mantra is a balanced budget. We are now looking at a budget for AAUW at the national level of, it's called the $16 million balanced budget. That means we expect income of $16 million and $16 million of expenses to pay for everything. However, the other additional mantra is, we will only fund what we can pay for. We are not going, as you can see, our reserves are small. We're not going bankrupt, but if we do not get the revenue we anticipate, we will continue to cut back on programs. Now, this is not our goal. We have fabulous programs that are meant to have such a, reach such a larger audience than in the past. So one of the things is for all of us, not only at the national level, but in our branches and across our states, if we want these programs to be in place and we want to reach tens of thousands and millions of girls, we need to fund the programs because we do have the programs available. So one of the things to know is that we are looking at a balanced budget. We had one for last year. We're looking one for this year. And if we don't get the revenue we need, we will continue to cut expenses. But we're operating within, our income. So I hope that gives you just an overview of the budget for the year.
And there were several questions about what is the size of our staff right now. I think we're running at around about 45 staff members. No, we did not cut staff this year to balance the budget that Sherry talked about. We cut expenses and we cut back on what we're doing. We can only do what we can pay for. So, and somebody asked me to explain more about the equity network. So think about the structure of AAUW. Most of you out there are branch members, so you're used to the regular structure of come to the monthly meeting of the branch. Well, we've all been at home with COVID, and many of our branches have started doing virtual programming. Well, that's what a lot of people outside AAUW like is virtual information, and we have lots of good information. So thus is born the Equity Network, a way to take webinars and information out to the general population. So if you go on the website and you look at it, you'll see the Equity Network programs that we've been presenting, and anybody can sign up for them. There's no membership to the Equity Network, but you can make a donation. We no longer have give a grad gift, because that really never worked out. You gave it to them and they never signed back up, but you can gift. You can sign somebody up for Equity Network and make a donation in their name. So that's what the Equity Network is. It's a way to take our great information and reach out to everybody, men, women, young, old, all ethnicities, and basically bring good equity information to them.
If I may just add one thing to that, Melinda, thank you so much for that. Just as a reminder, because we did put in a big portion in the State of AAUW webinar about the pilot of the Equity Network, it's predominantly came out of focus groups we did with 21 to 45-year-old people, working people who traditionally do not join AAUW, even if they had been involved with a collegiate branch of AAUW. They get in to the workplace and then they don't join in membership. And we were really missing working humans. And the name is deliberate as the Equity Network, because we also learned in those focus groups that they didn't just want the giant W for women. They really wanted to sit down with men and non-binary gendered people and have it be an inclusive, equitable opportunity to learn how to advocate and to move forward on inclusion and gender equity. And so they really want to also be peer-to-peer. So it's not a competition with membership, it's a complement. It's essentially meeting people where they are to provide them a way to engage with AAUW that's different than national membership or branch membership.
Thanks, Kim. I saw a question that I'd like to comment on, and I suspect that Melinda will want to also. It was about the Supreme Court decision that came out yesterday with respect to the employment protections for gay and transgender people. And it was a wonderful decision. I must say it was a surprise to a lot of people. The question was whether we think that was an anomaly or a harbinger of things to come in terms of court decisions. I would say it probably is not a harbinger of things to come, because another decision that came out yesterday that has not been talked about as much in the media was the fact that the court declined to hear 8 cases that were coming up from the states with respect to qualified immunity and the inability to sue police officers and other law enforcement officers when we see cases like we're seeing in the news now. And not taking up those cases means that, at least for some time to come, unless the Supreme Court decides that they will accept a case and reconsider their prior decision, qualified immunity is going to continue to stand as a precedent. Now, does that mean that people should not continue to try to sue in cases of excessive force, police brutality, instances where the police have wrongfully taken the life of someone? No, of course it doesn't mean that. But it does mean that it's going to continue to be an uphill fight with the court to try to get that precedent struck down.
One thing about the case that came down yesterday regarding the rights of all people, now in employment situations is that it was based on Title VII and the word sex. Title VII prohibits sex discrimination. And so what the court did yesterday was define what that means. We've always understood that it means you can't discriminate against women or you can't discriminate against men. But really what the court came down to say is it's really about discriminating against an individual based on their sex. And sex is very broad. And sex includes many more things than just female and male. And so my husband, who's lived with me for more than 30 years, said, well, do you think Congress is going to go in there and change it? And I said, well, they'd have to take the word sex out. And I think that would make a whole lot of women pretty angry if we lost our protection, since it's the only protection we have is Title VII, since we don't have an Equal Rights Amendment. So I don't think we're going to have a problem with the law changing. I think it is, while it's a great opinion, it's basically a definition that we should have considered a long time ago, and it's something that shows that at least for now, this court is looking at the law and being consistent. And so I think it's a good day. I think Justice Gorsuch wrote a very good opinion. It's very long, but you might want to look at it because it has some very, very interesting things on protecting people's rights in the workplace.
I think the Title VII aspects of it are very important. AAUW is still focused on Title VII and also Title IX. And our advocacy in these areas has really been important and continues to be important. And that's another really, I think, vital reason for continuing to support AAUW in these times. And I get a lot of questions from people like, well, I don't know what should I support? Where should my emphasis be? And I think for those of us who've been in AAUW and supported our views in the past of equity for all and advancing equity for women and girls in particular, this is a critical time because it's easy for people to lose track of where they should be putting their attention. And I just think it's critical for AAUW to still be in there fighting for women and girls and protecting Title VII and Title IX.
And I will also address something about the statement that AAUW made regarding what is going on with the protests now regarding police and basically Black Lives Matters and the stance we took. Surprise, surprise, we got a little pushback from our members as to why we're taking a stand on this and not just sticking with women and girls. Well, equity is the issue that we're about. And yes, we focus on women and girls, but we're about equity. And you cannot ignore what is going on if you're an equity organization, and that's what we are. And so that's why we took a stand along with everybody else, and we'll continue to take that stand because that's what we're about. It's in our mission statement, and it's in what we've always done, and it's what we've always done. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's been part of what our public policy priorities forever. And the thing is that there's a clear link between sexism and racism, any of these isms. It's just really important to understand that the connection is there. And I have been, just personally troubled by my own, I'm just sad, I guess is the right way to put it, that it's taken this pandemic to bring this to the fore again, that we really have this systemic racial issue in our country, and we need to address it. And AAUW, I think, has long taken the position that we need to address it. Whether we've done enough about it is another question. And I think all of us individually as women have an opportunity here now to do something about it.
And if you'll notice what you've seen in the last couple of years regarding like pay equity and our equal pay days, we always focused on the one day when all women finally earned what all men did. And that sounded really great when we started. But if you look at that date in April and you think what African American women have to wait and Hispanic women all the way to November before they earn for the previous year, that's what we need to have more focus on. While we want to advance equity for all women and equal pay for all women, this pandemic has shown us that certain groups of people are more affected. I've worked from home the whole time. I'm a lawyer. I can work from home. It hasn't affected me financially. Not true with hourly wage workers, service workers, lower income workers. And we need to be thinking about that and focusing on that. So all those questions about what are we going to do, we're going to keep doing what we're doing about equity and pay equity. And we're going to make sure that we focus on that group that really needs our help.
Julia and Peggy, there is which is actually related to this, because Anne Stillwell asked a question about which accounts do our research projects come from, and it relates back to exactly what Melinda was just saying about our mission and how we kind of pivot in these times. And I thought we could she's also asking what our next research project is. I'll just say one primer on this, and then if you can bring it from the board chair perspective and the finance chair perspective, it would be great. Essentially, again, what gets funded gets done, and research has largely been funded by unrestricted support over a very long period of time. That said, right now, we did receive a grant to do some research on women in manufacturing and attrition rates, which is quite interesting right now, given how much manufacturing in particular has been affected with tens of thousands of layoffs. We also are doing some research on STEM and how to bring more women into STEM fields. And third, thanks to support from the Munin Leche Giving Circle in California, we're going to be doing some cross-sectional analysis and really updating and refreshing our Simple Truth, which is our preeminent piece on pay equity, to really modernize it for all that cross-sectional analysis around race and gender, et cetera, in different fields. So you'll see all of that soon. But maybe, I don't know, Peggy, from a finance perspective, and Julia, since it was so important with our revised mission statement from 2 years ago to have research, because we believe in facts first and foremost. Peggy, how you look at that too as a finance chair and our investment committee chair, maybe if the two of you could add a little bit more on that.
Peggy?
What I was going to say was research has always been one of the cornerstones of AAUW. And yes, there are certain projects, research projects, which do get funded out of restricted assets, out of this great big pile. But actually, I think, Kimberly, it's correct to say very, very few research projects. They have to be very specific. For example, we have some new temporarily restricted assets which allow for research on what's going on in the STEM field for encouraging young women into the field. But in general, most of our research is done out of unrestricted assets, and our reserves, and that's where we actually need the funding right now. Another thing for, I think, branches to talk about, Kimberly, I don't know if you want to take a moment to talk about the 5-star program, but one of the things that is so important, I think, about AUW is our strategic plan at the moment, which is very focused on 4 different issues. The first issue is, that programs and projects are, to be categorized in one of these categories: education and training, economic security, leadership, and governance and sustainability. So those are the 4 things we're focused on, and that we also hope the branches through the 5-star program can align what they're doing in their branches, not across every single one of our goals, of our strategic goals, but there is an alignment between the strategic plan and our budget, what we're trying to accomplish. And yes, research is very much part of what we'd like to do. We do need some extra money to accomplish and do more projects in that area.
This is Sherry. I just think maybe we should bring up the point that not a lot of money goes to women's issues in philanthropy. And so when you ask, I saw a question in here, where will we get the money? One important thing to remember is that of all the money that goes to philanthropy, only about 1% of it, I think, Kim, maybe you can correct my specific number, goes to women's issues. And a great deal of that is going to reproductive health or medical issues, as opposed to the kinds of issues that AAUW fights for. So, the issues, we do need to find funding in order to be effective. And The funding comes from our members, but also from other organizations that are willing to fund our efforts. And that's what Kim and her team have been really focused on, is finding additional sources of funding to support specific projects that we have. It's a tough world out there to get money for women's issues.
It is. I'll just say on that, there's $400 billion in the United States donated to philanthropy, and 1.6% of it goes to support women and girls organizations. There was also a question about, well, what if you still want to restrict your or designated donation? You don't want to just do it general. I think I just want to reiterate what Peggy said. If we are going to be, none of us could have anticipated what would have happened this year. And if all of our money is tied up in restricted ways like that to specific designated projects, we simply won't be able to continue at the same rate that we are. But as Peggy just said, with those strategic plan buckets, there are ways, if your branch or you individually are most interested in pay equity, you can make a contribution towards economic security. If you are most interested in making sure we continue to provide educational opportunities and training for women, you can punch on that, right? So that gives you an opportunity to slightly restrict, but it still gives us the ability to be nimble and relevant in this ever-changing environment.
A lot of you ask, other than the 15 to 20% of our budget that comes from the dues, where else does our money come from? Well, the next pool of money would come from members who donate. So a lot of members give additional money and make donations. A next pot of money comes from supporters who make donations. So that's why we encourage people to be a supporter of AAUW, even if they don't want to be a member. Then, of course, we do reach out to corporations, but as you can see, out of all the money, 1.6% go to women's organizations, so we can't rely on that. So where our money comes from is anywhere we can grab it from, but mainly from donations from members, supporters, and corporations are the next group. And as far as expenses, I know we had specific questions about rent and things like that. This staff has done such a good job. Remember, we were over 100 staff members when Kim became our CEO. We're reduced down. They've been very creative in working together and moving around into our space and subleasing. So every expense that can be cut is being cut. And that's how Kim and her staff have been able to balance our budget. So don't be concerned that we're wasting any money, because there isn't any money to waste.
Yeah, that's
we're a lean, mean fighting machine.
You got it.
And just piggybacking a little bit on Melinda's comments about other potential sources of funding for the organization. There is $400 billion with a B dollars in the United States that goes to nonprofit organizations and charitable organizations. Peggy and Sherry and Melinda have pointed out that way less than 2% of that, in fact, only about 1.6% of that goes to organizations working on behalf of women and girls. But now you also have to factor in there are 400 nonprofit organizations in the country that have a mission that's similar to ours. And so all 400 of us are fighting for that little bite, not even a slice, a little bite of that pie. And along comes COVID-19, which has forced some foundations to shut their doors. Others have stopped giving. They've declared a moratorium until this whole thing is over and they can figure out where they are. A number of funders and corporations have tightened their purse strings. They've laid people off. Many of them are seeing that, working from home, people are being pretty productive. Maybe we want to think about having more of our workforce working from home instead of coming into the office every day. And so there is all kinds of change going on. And when the smoke finally settles and we figure out what flags are still up and what is still left standing, we're going to be seeing things, I think, funded in a very different way than they have been traditionally. If we think as many of us, including myself, over the years, when we think about membership, we think about that as the big M for AAUW. But in point of fact, the big M is mission. And if we focus on AAUW's mission and having meaningful impact on women and girls as we carry out programs and outreach opportunities in pursuit of that mission, one of the side effects or side benefits of that probably will be some people joining the organization as members that had not thought about it before or had never been members before. I wouldn't expect that there would be an avalanche of those people, but it will heighten the visibility of the organization. And let's face it, an organization that is approaching 140 years old, that has done an incredible amount for women and girls over that period of time. And still, if you stop 10 people walking down the street and ask them, do you know who AAUW is and what they do? Maybe only one of them, two on a good day, would know who we are. And so we need to be focused on our mission and being more visible, collaborating with other organizations, looking for partnership opportunities. And while I don't want to think of this thing with Mr. Floyd and the other people who have unfortunately lost their lives at the hands of overzealous, to put it nicely, law enforcement, the upside, if there is such a thing, is that it looks like it's going to finally present the opportunity for very real, let's sit down and talk to each other, something that has never really happened in any significant or meaningful way in this country's history. And it's an opportunity for AAUW to join in those efforts and talk to women and talk to people and talk to other organizations, basically to figure out how we can all reason together to come up with solutions that are going to benefit all of us.
Think about, those of you who've been around AAUW a long time, think about how many times you heard that our members just don't know how to use technology. Well, guess what? The pandemic makes us all experts now in technology. So let's continue to use the technology. We love to Zoom. Let's Zoom about these issues. Let's work with other branches. Let's get together and have discussions. And I'll take that another step. There's a lot of questions we've been asked about, can staff help a branch do this? Can staff help a branch do that? Our staff members really aren't experts on running a branch. I'll just warn you that. They know a lot about issues and all, but they don't know how to run your branch. Start using Zoom. Contact other branches. You want to, there was a question about what are you going to do now? You usually do a book sale, and how are you going to raise money? Why don't you get some more branches in your state? Why don't you guys talk about it? Send out a message and find out who else does book sales and have a Zoom conversation. Start using this technology, because you can talk with anybody from Alaska to New York to Florida to North Dakota. You don't need to just talk to the branch in your same city if there is one. So start using this technology two ways. Use it to help you with branch ideas, but also use it to start these discussions in your community and start using AAUW as a voice for these issues. Because we're very respected. We may not be well known, but those who know us respect us. We're a calm voice. We're a very respected organization. So use that. Reach out into community. Start these conversations. Open up to other groups, because there's some healing that needs to be done. And I think we could be the leaders on that in some of our small communities.
There's a question about what happens to Nick Whistle, and I thought that might be good to address. Any one of you can certainly jump in and look into your crystal ball as to what happens to Nick Whistle in May of 2021, but I'm happy to jump in too if you'd like.
Please do.
So, what will happen with Nick Whistle? So currently we are still under contract with the University of Maryland to bring 800 women from every part of the United States and beyond to Nick Whistle, our National Conference of College Women Student Leaders in May of 2021. We did have to postpone this year for all of the obvious reasons. That said, our team is already investigating and looking at ways in which to do it virtually or hybrid models or the like, because the likelihood of us just hitting a light switch and going back to the old normal is very rare. And there's a lot of talk about even once we have made some progress on COVID-19, it doesn't mean that we can just go back to the way things are. So we are watching it on kind of a weekly basis of how the COVID numbers are going and what the general respected experts are saying as to gatherings. There's a lot of talk here in Washington that likely getting more than 50 people together will not be until late spring of next year. So this idea that we're just going to flip the switch and we'll be back to the way things are, I think we need to be as prepared as possible, just as Melinda just said, for doing a lot of things virtually and safely, but still continuing to move our mission forward and still inspiring and creating change to impact so many women and girls in so many different ways. And one thing you may note, we just had a piece that came out on CNBC with on Know Your Value today of think about the class of 2020 of what they're facing. And I will tell you, the folks that have just graduated from college and are entering the worst job market in 90 plus years, they're also, some of them are attending our Equity Network sessions. And the number one things they're saying are, I had a job offer and now it's disappeared. My internship just dried up. I don't know if I can even go to grad school. What do I do now? There are no jobs. What do I do? And how, if I get furloughed, how do I explain that on my resume? So this is a really tenuous time, and being able to come together to give resources to that group of humans is really key too. So stay tuned on Nick Whistle. I wish I could tell you the real answer, but also it depends. We should all just be wearing our masks on this. We need to wear our masks and practice what our city and state and federal leaders are telling us to make sure we can protect ourselves and protect our fellow human beings around us.
I saw a question on the list that I'm really excited about. It was a question about the Equity Network. And they wanted to know what specific things can our branches do to introduce the Equity Network to the community and if there are guidelines for them to follow. Well, first of all, bear in mind that this is a pilot project. And once we get to the end of the pilot and we have an opportunity to analyze the findings, what the results of the pilot were, then we'll be able to strategize how we move forward with that, how it might be expanded, and what the branches can do specifically. But I'm excited about the question because it lets me know that the branches are excited about this prospect. And this is a big step forward for AAUW toward transformational change that is so needed.
I hope everybody knows that we have like two programs a week now coming on our webinars a week coming from National, and they're really fabulous. And if you haven't been able to join them live, you can join them, the recorded versions. You can pull them up on the website and look at all of them. I mean, they are excellent programs, and it's an opportunity. As I said at the beginning, it's an exciting time to think about reinventing how we get our message out and our programming. And our staff has done a fabulous job at pivoting overnight, really, to developing this kind of online programming. And you can use it in your branches in place of doing your own programming. You can connect a bunch of people to watch these things. It's really exciting, and I hope everybody's taking the time to look at them.
Yeah, it's a chance not to have to reinvent the wheel and to be able to push some really good information and a good product out there into your communities.
Julia, there's a question here too, which I really liked about could regional conventions we had to cancel be converted to virtual? And I think we all know yes. And in fact, many states and regions are doing them virtually and incredibly successfully with sometimes double the amount of humans attending because they are virtual. In fact, I'll be participating in the Rocky Mountain Mountain West one just this coming weekend on Saturday. And I don't know if any of the other board members want to talk about your experience with virtual conventions too.
Well, in Texas, we decided that we were going to do some things virtual. And so we started the morning with a State of the Union address that was live on Facebook. And while we had 70 or 80 people that watched it live, by the end of the day, 500 people had watched that State of the Union. So we got, no way would we have 500 people at our state convention. So all during the day, we sent out messages, we did our awards, and then at the end of the day, we had a Zoom awards happy hour, and we had, again, almost 80 people on that, which would have been maybe what we would have had at the event, but these people can watch it at any time. They don't have to be there live. And so it's given us a great opportunity to reach out to people who don't come to the meetings. Even branches are finding out that they are doing these programming and they'll have double what they would have had if they held a luncheon or they met somewhere. So don't waste this opportunity to use some of these programs that National has recorded. Watch them as a group and then talk about them. Have a discussion. Reach out to other people that aren't members and have them join you. It's just a great opportunity to use a lot of product that's already there, and you don't have to find a speaker. And if you want to find a speaker, you can find a speaker anywhere now because it's all virtual and they can come from anywhere. So this is a good opportunity.
I know we want to thank everybody who's joined today. And one of the things is we've all expressed our gratitude for technology that's allowing us, and just to mention the convening series that Kimberly's having, but we want our members and our branches to be so much more closely connected to National. And we hope that all of you who are on the call today will certainly reach out. And just to warn you, I love to talk about finances. So if anybody wants to talk more about the budget or the finances, make sure you email me. But I think all of us stand wanting to reach out and connect with all of you. And thank you for being here today. I know Julia will say something more.
Well, and I want to make before people have to start getting off because they've got other Zoom meetings to go to. We want to say thank you again, and for the great questions, and for the questions that were not answered during the call. We will be sure to get answers to those and post those someplace on the website for you to be able to find them.
And I want to make a closing comment about how you can make a lasting impact on this country through AAUW. Join the Legacy Circle. I told him I'd have my visual aid. Leave something to AAUW. That's where part of our budget comes from too. People like you that decide they're going to leave money to AAUW.
Yeah, and I just want to add, when I think back about organizations that have made a real difference in my life, AAUW is one of them. And why wouldn't I give to AAUW? When I think about it that way, like what has made a difference in my life, AAUW is right up there. And so it is one of the top 3 charities that I give to, and philanthropies that I give to. And if everybody in AAUW would make AAUW one of their top 3 philanthropies, we wouldn't have to have that little Lego set over there with the tiny little part of unrestricted funds.
Well, let me piggyback on that and talk just very briefly about how you can also do that in small ways. We know that because of what's been happening with COVID and the pandemic, and a lot of members counting their pennies and watching their spending, whatever amount you can give will be helpful to carry out AAUW's mission. But in case you're not aware, not only does your membership entitle you to discounts at a number of retail places, If you shop on Amazon.com,
Oh, right.
you can go to Smile, and part of your purchase will go to AAUW. It'll be donated by Amazon if you designate AAUW as the charity that you want to participate in that program. The other thing they do, and I just had a birthday a couple of weeks ago, so I had a Facebook fundraiser for AAUW and sent requests to all of my Facebook friends and family asking them to donate. So there are lots of little ways that really don't cost you anything extra, and you can still benefit AAUW and its mission.
Yeah, absolutely true. So can I just make one final comment, and that is about this is a time for reinvention, and we all know that, but I think AAUW women in particular, we are really capable of thinking about reinvention, and I hope everybody here will think about what are the ways that we can really push our mission, reinvent what we do, rethink how we do it, rethink where our own resources are in support of women and girls, because again, the pandemic has shown the need is really huge, and it's for all women, and it's not just about the way we've thought about it in the past. It's about thinking about how do we have to change for the future. So I just encourage us all to use AAUW as a mechanism. This is a good circle of friends. I mean, almost all my friends are AAUW members, and it's a really great circle of people to brainstorm with and to think about how can we really make a change.
Thank you all again so much. Kim, are we out of time?
We are, ladies, but I think this has been fabulous. And I would say we need to do more of these because it gives a chance, for our members to not just engage with our staff and some of our fellows and our special speakers, but directly with you, our board leaders. I have the pleasure of getting to speak with you or Zoom or FaceTime with you regularly, but our members don't. And, with 64,000 members, the majority of which are branch members, but a good portion of national members as well, it's important to engage in these ways. And that's one good thing about this horrible pandemic is we're getting to see and hear from one another, because emails sometimes just don't cut it. So I think we all know that. Words are words, but getting to see somebody's face, see how they express it, hear their tone, hear their passion and commitment. You clearly get that from these 4 extraordinary leaders, as well as from the other 11 board members who also are very ably supporting our mission and all of you in your good work. So I know we'll be doing more of these. We look forward to seeing you on future Zooms. I'll be on one with the Equity Network on Thursday night, and we've got more ahead in the coming days. So stay tuned. Don't turn off your laptops, but do go stretch your legs after this long session. And enormous thanks to Julia, Melinda, Peggy, and Sherry for joining everybody tonight. Hope to see you all again on Zoom again soon. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.